What's going on, everybody? Here today with another Bodhi Tree mental health video. On this channel, I talk about my own journey through severe mental illness, mainly obsessive compulsive disorder, severe anxiety. The title of today's video is how to get this out of my head, post-Finasteride syndrome. I got a comment from a viewer, and this is really going to probably be my last video unless I get some more specific questions on this topic. And one guy asked in the comment section, he said, I agree with you a lot. How do I get over this? You say this is all in my head. Okay, maybe it is all in my head. Maybe I do have health OCD. Maybe I do have an anxiety disorder. Maybe that is a possibility. If I do, now what? Now what do I do? Because it all feels so real. I'm kind of just stuck in this endless loop of anxiety and depression and brain fog and worrying and obsessing about my health and depressed about my situation. It's important to understand if you're making the transition from post-Finasteride syndrome to OCD, anxiety, and a mental health problem. It's important to understand that you still have the same problem. It's the same problem. You've been living with a mental health problem. Just your approach now has to be different, and your understanding of the problem has to be more accurate. And it's important to understand that if you've been suffering from this post-Finasteride syndrome situation, for a lengthy period of time, then that means that, probably it's going to take quite a bit of work to actually overcome this type of mental health problem. If you've been struggling with your mental health for a long time, and it's got to the point to where it's really affected your life, like obviously you're experiencing physical symptoms, you're difficult to hold the job, difficult to hold a relationship down, difficult to interact with others, just your whole life has kind of been sabotaged, like so many people with PFS, with anxiety, with OCD deal with. It's important to understand that when mental health problems get to this point, that you're still looking at a long-term problem. So it's important to understand what you're dealing with. What you're dealing with is really fucking bad. It's a serious problem. Your problem is as serious as it feels. It's just not what it feels. Let me say that again. Your problem is as serious as it feels. It feels that it's as bad as it feels. You feel completely fucked up, no energy, low libido. You feel like trash in every way. Your life is fucked up in every way. It's because your life is fucked up in every way. This is not moving from a more serious problem to a less serious problem. This is moving from one serious problem, post-Finasteride syndrome, to another very serious problem, chronic mental health struggles, OCD, and anxiety. The difference is that you can start to tackle the reality of the situation. Versus with PFS, there's no known treatment for it. So as long as you have PFS, you always have PFS. And I can imagine that the only people that actually really make any improvement on having PFS are people that actually try and accept having PFS. And therefore, through them actually trying to accept and come to terms with it, they feel in their head, they may be able to make some improvement, and that whole key of acceptance is really the first thing that I'm going to talk about. When you're struggling with your mental health, whatever the symptoms are, all right, from the past, trauma, depression, anxiety, health anxiety, whatever, we have a really difficult time with acceptance. What is acceptance? Acceptance is, all right, not being for or against anything in this given moment. And in any given moment when you're struggling with your mental health, typically you're wound up in that story I was talking about. That story about what happened, what could have been, what should have been. That worry that this is never gonna end, or whatever the uncertainty or whatever the problem is, or whatever, all of these things that you're struggling with in your mind are all things that you haven't accepted. Can you actually accept that, hey, maybe you have post-Finasteride syndrome, and maybe your life is fucked, and maybe you have to move forward anyways. And truly accept that, not worry about it, not be depressed about it, not whatever, just to completely be at peace with that situation, and broadly all situations. All right, the person you've become, the people you deal with around you. Acceptance is a philosophy that you can apply to every part of your life, not just with your situation with PFS, not just with your situation around what's bothering you in your head, but it's all the other small situations that arise every day. You're at work, someone says something to you, you don't like something that happened at work or with your family or relationships, something didn't go your way, everything's just always so hard and you never get what you want, nothing's ever going right, whatever. It could be politics, it could be people on social media, whatever. There's a bajillion things that we can fight reality on. We can fight reality on who we are. We can do things and say things and act in ways, and then we can worry about those things, and then we can be upset about those things. So we have to accept ourselves, we have to accept the people around us, we have to accept what's happened to us, we have to accept the fact that we might have BFS, we have to accept the fact that we have a serious mental health problem. Maybe it is all in our head, maybe we look like a fool, maybe we're crazy, maybe we're fucked up, maybe we're lost, maybe we never get better, maybe it's just all over and life isn't even worth living anymore. Alright? So we have to accept all of these things. So acceptance is about not being, it's not being for any of these things. It's not saying, oh yeah, fuck it, it's all over, I'm going to take my own life. It's just saying, hey, maybe I'm not in a good spot, maybe it is all over for me, and just moving forward in that moment. So acceptance is just that realization that you can't change the past, you can't change the past, and you can't change the past, and you can't control the future. You can't change who you are, and you can't change how other people are. Alright? So this is just this type of attitude of acceptance as a philosophical framework in which you want to move towards. You want to adopt this type of attitude towards life. So where you just put down everything and just move forward. Now here's the thing. The acceptance philosophy is important to develop because in order to deal with OCD and anxiety, and this is what I teach on here. So acceptance is in a way kind of it's not directly a Buddhist concept, but it leans in that direction, right? Meditation, mindfulness, and you could say like a secular Buddhist perspective. That means looking at Buddhist philosophy, but not in regards to like in a religious sense, but just in the wisdom that's in Buddhism. All right, basically this philosophy, the Buddhist philosophy is pretty simple. It's pretty much that nothing exists outside of any given moment, and that life itself is transitory. And really, if we were to break down the Four Noble Truths, and I talk about them on this channel, is that life is suffering and pain. All right, that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth is that our suffering and pain arises from our desires. Their desires to have certain things, possess certain different people, or overall for reality itself to go the way that we want. And whenever we want things, whenever we hope or we desire things to be different than they are, that is what leads to suffering. That's what leads to suffering. And the third noble truth is that suffering there can be a cessation, there can be an end to suffering. And then the fourth noble truth is the eightfold noble path. And among all of these things on the eightfold noble path, what is stressed the most, because if you can master and you can get a hold of these things, which is meditation and mindfulness, the rest of the Eightfold Noble Path will come natural, like right speech, right view, non-judgment, becoming a non-judgmental, more soft-spoken, more compassionate, caring individual. This comes from a result of mindfulness and meditation. So if you just focus on mindfulness and meditation, the rest of the Eightfold Path will just fall into place. It's not something that you'll have to consciously do. Now, I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm going to jump into really the way that I have, worked on my mental health. So if you want to work on your anxiety, you have to first adopt this more non-judgmental acceptance philosophy. And the second thing is that you have to pick up meditation and mindfulness. What is mindfulness? The very definition of mindfulness, it might sound like, oh, well, my mind is full of stuff. What mindfulness means in this context is awareness. Someone says, be mindful of the time, be mindful of what you say, be mindful of where you are. It means to be aware of what you are, where you are, be aware of what you're saying, be aware of what you're doing. And in this context, mindfulness is the same. It's simply the ability to be aware of the present moment in a non-judgmental way. It means to be directly in the present moment, in the here and now. Basically, it means to be not lost in your thoughts. It means to be in the here and now. And meditation, there's so many misconceptions about meditation. Formal meditation practice is just that practice. It's just the practice of sitting down and being aware of the present moment and bringing your mind back to the present moment whenever you're lost in thought. And that is the practice of meditation. But you don't have to necessarily have a formal meditation practice in order to get started practicing this skill, because we're always in the present moment. We're just typically always lost somewhere else in our own minds. And so it's like with mindfulness, you can start practicing formally, or you can start to bring it into your everyday life. The goal is to start to bring mindfulness practice into your everyday life, or start with meditation practice. You can choose. I just brought it into my everyday life, and start to practice it in every moment that you can. Because when you're truly in the present moment, you are actually in a state of complete acceptance, because your mind is here and you're here in the present moment. And so this right here, this is you all day. Chatter. It's become so normal for you. It seems so crazy that when you kind of quit talking, right? So this is you. This is the voice in your head, and you're like this all day with this voice in your head. And when you go like that, this is meditation. All right, this is meditation. The mind keeps going, but you don't say anything in return. And in that moment that you quit having that conversation, you'll automatically become present. You'll automatically dive into the present moment. It's just that simple. It seems simple, but it's very difficult, because this is a habit that's very difficult to break. That's why meditation is so difficult for people that even don't have meditation problems. Anybody that's developed this compulsive thinking habit, it's very difficult to break it. That's why meditation is so difficult. And so it may take some time for you to actually understand what I'm talking about. It may actually take some time for you to enter the present moment one time. Some people will catch on quicker than others. But entering the present moment is the beginning. All right, that's the first that's the first stage of that understanding of, oh, this is what it's like not to have that conversation in my head, to let my mind go and just keep on living. And from that moment on, it's truly just a practice of continually doing that and bringing it into your everyday life. And what you'll find is that typically, or what I found, I think most people find, is that when you have an anxiety disorder, all of that anxiety is going to come straight up. In fact, it's not uncommon for you to maybe even suffer panic attacks, or all types of physical symptoms will come right up to the top, because that loop in your mind, all right, you're no longer engaging in that type of compulsive thinking, and all of those feelings that you think you're already feeling, whenever you quit having that conversation, all of that pain is going to come right up to the surface. It's going to come up, right away, and it's going to sit there. And that's really what you have to do. You have to learn to live in a state of acceptance and move forward in a mindful way with your life. You have to give up on life, in a sense, and just live moment to moment with these chronic, mental health problems. And what happens is, over time, is that your minds will quiet down. It'll start to quiet down, and it's like you'll literally walk out of this whole fog of anxiety and depression. You'll walk out of it, and your mind will just become empty again and calm again, where you'll see everything and everything will be still. And it's a very surreal experience, and something that will take months, perhaps years to do, to be honest with you. If you have a severe anxiety disorder, it's something I've been working on for like 3 years, so it's I was in a really, really, really bad place. So it's something that takes a really long time for a lot of people. Hopefully you're not as far gone as I was, but it's going to take a long time, typically, for people that have a severe mental health problem, to kind of walk out of that, and then just have your mind just be completely empty, and just be, you will get to the point, all right, you want to get to the point where you're completely in the present moment with no thoughts or strong emotions. And when you get to that point, that's what they call enlightenment. And why do they call enlightenment? Because you're enlightened. There's a light within you. There's a lightness in you, because you no longer have that voice. That voice, all right, just quits talking and eventually just shuts up. And this is what Buddhists call non-self. No self. Non-self. Okay? There's no self. Because when you're talking, who are you talking to? You say, I'm talking to myself. But you're really just talking to your mind. What happens when you don't talk to your mind? Okay? Now you're present. Now you just let the mind keep on chattering. Okay? Now you're developing mindfulness. You start to dive into the present moment. It starts to deepen in there. And your whole mind changes. Your whole reality changes. It's a whole deepening. There's a lot of books on this. There's a guy called Rupert Spira. I suggest him. There's a guy named Sadhguru. There's a lot of spiritual teachers. But in short, this is the path. There's no other path. Don't get me wrong, you go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, you get put on medication. Or you could do what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, thought restructuring, and there's other different types of ways to deal with this type of problem. But the thing is that at this point, if you really want to just get over suffering, you just want it really is like the Buddha said. How do you quit suffering? Is just to quit thinking about your problems. The problem is that when you're lost deeply in your own mind, that seems impossible. Everything seems so real. It seems so real that you have post-Finasteride syndrome, that you have all of these issues going on. So it seems so real that you have all this stuff going on. And so, your mind has become larger than reality. And you have to. That's the goal. If you really want to really be happy in this life, you have to quit thinking about this world, thinking about your problems. And to go back to what I said about the Buddhist Four Noble Truths, if you can accept that life is truly pain and suffering, then you'll suffer less. It's truly seeing that. You think you're not supposed to be going through all of these trials and tribulations, but the life is a trial and tribulation. It's your desire for life to be more than pain and suffering that causes you the pain and suffering. It's that desire. Things shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't be going through this right now. You know, it's that desire for things to be different than they are that actually leads to the suffering. If you accept on its face that life is like this, that we're all here, we all go through struggles and problems, that life is painful, that life is transitory, that things are always changing, that we're all born alone and that we all die alone. And when you accept all of the horrors of our existence, then you can open up to the beauty of our existence, because you're no longer troubled by the reality of how things actually are. You know, you can accept the fact that you truly have post-Finasteride syndrome. You have these thoughts and these feelings and these symptoms and these urges, and you've lost a tremendous amount of time, so to speak, and you have lost a tremendous amount of everything. Your life is not turned out the way that you've wanted it to. It's in a bad place. You can truly start to accept that and see that that's okay. That's how life is. Life is not a highlight reel on an Instagram story. It's not, you know, all everything that culture and everything that our society pushes us towards, success and happiness. And there's this idea of being happy. There is no long-term happiness in this life. There is only peace and tranquility long-term. The people that are chasing happiness will always lead to suffering. They'll always lead to suffering. I was one of these people, you know, right? I mean, it's simple, right? It might sound like, oh, I'm having this very hard, philosophical, Buddhist philosophical, kind of rant. But, I mean, seriously, it's as simple as just losing your hair and not accepting that, you know? Now, it doesn't mean that you can't go on Finasteride and accept that you're losing your hair. But you couldn't accept that you were losing your hair. It bothered you. You got on Finasteride. You experienced some symptoms, or so you thought. You couldn't accept that. Maybe you were developing PFS. And look at you now. Now you're in a tremendous amount of suffering. You're in a tremendous amount of pain. It's those things. It's those small things that lead to a tremendous amount of suffering. You just couldn't accept the fact that you were losing your hair. That, you wouldn't look as good as you once did. And maybe girls wouldn't want you like they once did. Or maybe they didn't even want you at all. You couldn't accept that. You couldn't accept you were getting older. You couldn't accept that you weren't, all of these things. Why do people take Finasteride? Why do people get hair transplants? Now, that's not to say, like I said, just to repeat, I just kind of regurgitate and just, again, you can be in complete acceptance and just take Finasteride and say, you know what, I want to keep my hair. You know what I mean? I want to get a hair transplant, I want to get Finasteride. But it's when it gets into your mind, I gotta keep my hair. If I don't think it's gonna be this way. What's going on? Like, how come I'm having these side effects? Oh, Google. Oh, fuck, I'm developing this PFS. See? Just learning to flow with life. It's such a skill. To just be, just to flow with the way things how they actually are. How do you be truly happy in this life? By giving up. And that's the reality. Nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that. You stress yourself the fuck out and develop mental health problems. I'm speaking from experience. Anyways, I hope this video finds you well. If you have any questions, I'm not going to sit on here. I don't have time to break down everything about mindfulness and mindfulness exercise. I don't have the time for that. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of material online. There's a lot of good books. I represent Thich Nhat Hanh. Just Google books, mindfulness on Amazon. There's a whole lot of different paths to get started on mindfulness. There's a lot of great talks about mindfulness. There's a lot of gurus out there that's written books. Rupert Spira, Sadhguru, many more. Eckhart Tolle is probably the most famous one. His book Power of Now. There's a whole lot of people. There's a whole lot of good gurus that you can listen to and stuff like that, and you can get started on the same path, and you can realize all of the things that I'm talking about in this video. So I hope this video finds you well. Like, share, subscribe below. Peace.